John Deal is joining us via Skype. He's a House Majority Leader. Jane Duker is a former Chief of Staff to Governor Holden and editorial page editor of the St. Louis Post-Dispatch, Tony Messenger. Tony, President Obama exchanged one prisoner for 5 Guantanamo Bay detainees, and it caused a firestorm all around the country. What are your thoughts?
My initial reaction is I think what most Americans' initial reaction was, and that is we leave no soldier behind. We brought a soldier home. Let's celebrate that we brought this prisoner home. And that's still my general thought. I think that this is one of those complicated, nuanced issues that in today's political system is so difficult to deal with, because even some of those members of John's party on the Republican side who had the same initial reaction to me, there's a Iowa Senate candidate who had the exact same initial reaction to me, had a tweet that was almost identical to a friend of mine's Facebook post who I liked as soon as it happened, and then she deleted her tweet once some members of the Republican Party decided that this was another opportunity to attack the president. I think it's reasonable to raise questions as to whether or not the president gave up too much. I believe that probably Bo Bergdahl is going to have to face a court-martial because he may be a deserter. He is not a hero. He is not a sympathetic character. A lot of his fellow soldiers don't like him. But I've got a son who's a Marine officer. And bring every soldier back applies whether you are a Democrat or a Muslim or a Republican or gay or a good soldier or a bad soldier. War is hell, and that's the reality of it, and that's what bring every soldier back means. And I think our commander-in-chief made ultimately the only decision that a commander-in-chief can make. And I'm disappointed and somewhat angered by some of the vitriol, because there used to be a time in this country in which when it came to certain foreign policy type decisions, there were no parties. There was a country that stood behind its commander-in-chief, and then there was time later to come back and look at it and say, hey, was this the right decision? How will history treat it? I don't know how history is going to treat this decision yet. A lot of that will have to do with what happens to those 5 Taliban members from Guantanamo Bay who are now in Qatar and may end up back in Afghanistan. But right now, in my heart, in my gut, the president made absolutely the right decision.
House Majority Leader John Deal, what are your thoughts as you watch this?
Yeah, I think from a gut reaction standpoint, it's long been a tenet of our military that we leave no soldiers on the field, and I think that is a principle that we need to uphold, and it's the right call. I find it somewhat laughable that some Democrats are now saying we need to leave politics on foreign policy at the water's edge, kind of like we did when Bush was trying to deal with Iraq, I guess. But what I find most troubling about this, and I think what the president has to answer to, is why he didn't follow the advice of his own advisors. I'm reading a quote right now from Leon Panetta. Okay, and Leon Panetta says, "I don't fault the administration for wanting to get him back. I do question whether the conditions are in place to make sure these terrorists don't go back into battle." Okay, and then he goes on to say that if I send prisoners from Guantanamo Bay, they have to guarantee they don't go back to the battlefield, period. I had serious concerns. I think it's not that a deal was made, it's what deal was made, what were the conditions of it, and also to answer the questions that is it true that 5 to 8 of our soldiers died trying to find this soldier because he went AWOL. I think those are serious questions that need to be answered. It's not the principle of getting that soldier back. It's the conditions that were done to make that happen.
That's John Deal. My 2 cents on this is both administrations have released people and released detainees from Guantanamo Bay, and both administrations, while releasing these detainees, have gone back to the battlefield. and we didn't get any prisoner of war for giving up these detainees. Also, it's a little disturbing when people say we don't negotiate with terrorists. We say that all the time, but we do. Bush did it. Clinton did it. Reagan did it.
Right.
I mean, we negotiate with terror. We don't like to say we do it, and we tell people we don't, but in the end, we do. That's a revisionist history if you think we don't. Jane Duker, your thoughts?
Well, and, I'm really torn about this because, why now? This guy, it's been 5 years and, maybe there was a moment when this could happen. The issue of, did people die trying to find this guy? I also believe, though, that, you're entitled to your due process in your court-martial. And if you did something wrong while serving, then that happens here in the United States.
Do you want the Taliban to administer justice to this guy, or do you want America to administer justice?
That to me is untenable no matter what. So, we due process. He's a citizen. He's entitled to due process here. Okay, so now we decide whether this was a good deal or not. And again, I think it has to be transparent. I think we're going to have to look at this deal. But this idea of we're going to impeach and traitor and just stop it. It's ridiculous. And I agree. We've always negotiated with terrorists because now everybody's a terrorist. The expensive definition of that makes it relatively meaningless.
John Deal negotiates with Democrats. What's the difference between that and terrorists?
Absolutely right. On any given day, right?
Terrorists on both sides of the aisle.
Yeah. So but due process happens here, and so the idea that there would be any circumstances in which we wouldn't believe that it's the right thing to do to bring him back here. I would hope that most people agree on that. Now, whether this was the right way to do it, we need to judge the president, and it needs to be transparent as to how it was done.
John. And also, too, why did he go against the advice of the people that are paid to advise some of these situations? There are a lot of people that believe this is just a backdoor way of closing Guantanamo Bay, which has been prohibited by Congress, and I think that's a legitimate question.
Well, but he's the decider. That's how it works. There's going to be advisors on both sides.
Bill Gates.
Agreed, Jane. That's why
he's got to make the call. That's his job.
Right.
Bill Gates.
Explain why that call was made the way it was made.
Bill Gates, the Secretary of Defense, I believe, when asked should he go after bin Laden, said no. So there was a mixed cabinet reaction to whether or not they go in and get bin Laden.
The other part of this, there is the potential angle as to whether or not the president was using this to fulfill his promise to close Guantanamo to some degree. I actually think there's a higher likelihood that there was a wire story that we ran in the Post-Dispatch today that talked about how there is a chance that this is part of a larger negotiation for peace in Afghanistan as we draw down our troops, that this was an effort to help create some trust in our ongoing negotiations to make sure that there's peace in that country. And if that's the larger goal and that it's related to that, then I think history will judge it very positively. But again, that's one of those things that we're not going to know for 4 or 5 years. And so I think dialing down the rhetoric is probably good for our country right now.
Israel trades thousands of Palestinians for 2 or 3 Israel troops. It happens all the time.
Right.
All right. We are officially out of time. John Deal, we'll let you get back to work via Skype. John,
good.
Thanks for checking in. Be good. Have a good week. We'll talk to you next Thursday.
Thank you.
You got it. Jane Duker, former Chief of Staff to Governor Holden and all-around Girl Friday. Jane, thanks for checking in.
Thank you.
And that's Tony Messenger. You read him on the editorial page along with his board on the St. Louis Post-Dispatch website, stltoday.com. Good morning, Tony. Thanks for joining us.
Always good to be here.
All right. You want to know what?